So you mentioned that Amtrak was built to fail in the sense that we didn't properly fund it. How could funding for Amtrak and infrastructure potentially change how the safety of these kinds of trains, what that looks like, and how Amtrak runs?
Well, part of it's funding, and part of it is prioritization. Right now, we don't do either one of those things very well. It's a little bit amount of money, and it's spread around the country because it's a national system. But it's really three systems. It's these long-distance routes that go from literally the one end of the continent to the other that take a lot of money to operate and don't bring a lot of money in from revenues. There are shorter routes that operate within states in California and in Michigan and Virginia, places like that.
In Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania has a couple of them. And then there's the Northeast Corridor from D.C., basically through New York up to Boston. And that is the part of the system that's the most efficient, that generates actually a positive operating balance and essentially subsidizes the rest of the system. So part of what they're trying to do now is to allow the Northeast Corridor routes to retain some of that funding and then to invest it back into the system because it's just reached the end of its useful life. We have to maintain it so that just the basic infrastructure doesn't fail, but we have to upgrade it and modernize it for things like positive train control, which is very much in the paper because of that it could have probably prevented this crash if the automatic system had kicked in and slowed the train down around the curve. So it's not just more funding, it's really prioritizing that funding and make sure it's going to the right places.
We'll get to positive train control in a minute, but Jim, I wanted to ask, it's my understanding that the U.S. House just voted to slash funding for Amtrak. How are we going to get around this funding crisis for Amtrak? Is there a way in which Amtrak could be better funded, potentially related to the fact that this Northeast Corridor is actually cash positive?
So, first off, hopefully that was just a House Appropriations Committee, so hopefully the rest of the House and the Senate will come to their senses and realize that we need to increase funding. They slashed it from $1.4 billion about annually to $1.13, I want to say, and hopefully that won't remain. More generally, and I think the point that has been made, when we will be talking about positive train control, which is essentially a GPS system with automatic braking, which we have in cars, but we're talking about 1.3, 1.4 billion. Volkswagen's R&D budget alone 2 years ago was 15.4 billion. So when we talk about why can't Amtrak do this? Why can't they figure this out? That's why. There's this huge difference, and until we recognize the need for that, we're not going to. And people might say that's a private company, they should do that, but we subsidize car transportation in all sorts of ways. Most of our highways and streets, for example, they don't make money, even the toll roads.
Airlines as well.
Airlines as well, and it's just we need to really think about this in a sensible, intelligent way and look at the math and go, this needs more funding.